Hola, I'm Amanda Marvin, Spanish teacher at the Barstow School in Kansas City, Missouri. This lesson, Mapping the Americas, has its roots in my childhood. Growing up, we had a world map on a corkboard next to the kitchen table. We would talk about current events and put a pushpin into the places where they were occurring. Each pin represented a different story, and I loved exploring the map and thinking about the different locations of each event. As a result, I have always had a love of maps. There are maps in my children's playroom, maps in my home as art, maps on my coffee cups, maps in my classrooms. However, I had never really used maps in my classroom. Thus, a personal goal for me as I took this course: how to include geographical awareness that allows students to make connections between what they can observe on a map and what they know about history and culture in a meaningful way in my Spanish language classroom. Most of my lessons tend to focus around a specific individual or community that I want the students to learn about. Because of the idea of scale, it made me think bigger, the Americas. This lesson adapts and builds on the National Geographic Floor and Table Americas map, the Rivers of the Americas, and the Language of the Americas classroom resources. As I began, I was both hesitant and excited. Was it going to be meaningful? Would it be comprehensible? Would it spark curiosity and collaboration? Now that the lessons are over, I can enthusiastically say yes, yes, and yes, as the student responses surpassed my expectations. The first lesson was a surprise to students. They were handed a stack of papers and given the rules. You have to work in together, and you have to speak in Spanish. A few of the students just looked at me. Others started rifling through the papers, and soon I heard, "Es un mapa." It's a map. In no time at all, the students were on the ground sorting papers, looking for something, anything familiar. I was extremely proud of the students as they used what they know in Spanish to come up with a system and jobs for each group member. It was organic and very functional. After they finished, we stood around one of the maps to observe, reflect, and discuss. In fact, every lesson ended in the same way: observation, reflection, discussion. One student told me, "I'm embarrassed by my lack of geography. I want to know more." Another said, "It's not a rectangle," referring to the difficulty in putting the map together based on the idea that the South is below us. Another was proud of her group, saying, "I can't believe we did that in Spanish." The next two lessons continued with the use of the Americas table map. First, the focus was on the geographic features of the Americas. Students had to listen, interpret the language, and observe the map as I gave instructions for locating features such as oceans, rivers, mountain ranges, and what to do. In the following clip, for example, we are discussing the equator and the mountain ranges of the Americas.
Entonces, ahora vamos a identificar una cosa muy importante que se llama el Ecuador. El Ecuador es el nombre de un país, pero también es el nombre de una línea imaginaria. ¿Qué significa Ecuador? Es en el medio de la tierra. Entonces, sí, muy bien. Identifica dónde está el Ecuador y necesitas trazar la línea en rojo. ¿Qué observas de estas cordilleras?
Cerca del océano.
Cerca del océano, muy bien. Ahí es donde dos placas están en movimiento. ¿Qué más observas?
My favorite part of the lesson was the following sound.
Mi tortuga. ¿Qué? ¿Cómo digo es un tortuga? So, hay una cabeza y los
Engaged students collaborating together in Spanish. Next, we mapped the languages of the Americas. Students thought there would only be about 7 languages and were amazed at the language diversity in the Americas after we mapped 18 languages. The observation of where language is spoken led to a very thoughtful class discussion about colonization, the Middle Passage, immigration, refugees, and trade. For many students, this was the first time they had mapped a cultural idea, and the ability to visualize the variety in language spatially was eye-opening. For the final lesson, I really wanted students to think about the idea of perspective and bias. So we began by looking at this image from Joaquin Torres Garcia titled America Invertida. The students were confused, intrigued, disoriented. After that, we discussed the purpose, history, and bias of maps. For most students, this was the first time they had seen an upside-down map or even considered the possibility that the United States is not really the center of the world. One of my goals for including this last lesson of world maps and our perspective when looking at our place on a map was to begin a discussion which will be ongoing that encourages responsibility for understanding how and why we think certain things. The inverted artwork and map serves a purpose in beginning to have students think about what they think and why, and to question their thoughts and assumptions. I want them to be active and responsible in their learning. I will be the Spanish teacher for this group of students for the next 2 years. I am excited to use maps as we move forward together. We brainstormed other ideas that they would like to see spatially represented, and I plan to keep the table maps for use next year in order to layer and expand our understanding. This experience has impacted me greatly as a teacher. I feel more confident and braver to think in new ways and try new things. Muchas gracias.